So, very exciting. Wargaming is going to be releasing an Italian DD line at some point in the near future. And they are making the ships available for internal testing as soon as next year, beginning of next year. The line is going to start at tier 2 and it's going to go all the way to tier 10. We're going to take a look at the ships themselves, hopefully. Yeah, okay. And then we'll talk about the stats that they have available with them. It's a very interesting line because it involves SAP. Now, there is currently an Italian battleship. There's currently an Italian DD in the game right now, Paolo Emilio. And Paolo Emilio is a ambush specialist. It takes the exhaust smoke mechanic that the Italian cruisers and battleships have, and it applies it to a DD that has really high damage short range torpedoes. And it can maneuver quickly into a position where it can ambush while in smoke. That is not the design of the Italian DD line. The Italian DD line is going to be one where it is specializing in short range damage per minute with guns, and then it has sea mine like slow torpedoes that have greater range than the main battery. This is the tier 2. We've got the, and I do not know the pronunciation. I am just going off of what I see because it's honestly more humorous. Kurtatone? Kurta. This is the tier 2. We'll look at the stats. Just appearance-wise, obviously it's a tier 2. You know, there's nothing really big about the appearance that I see. The guns don't have any armor to speak of, so they could get damaged, but it's a tier 2. Who cares? Tier 3, we have the Nazario Sorrow. Probably Sorrow is related to Saruman. That would be my guess. It is a work in progress. This is the tier 2. The front gun looks pretty interesting. It looks like oversized and sort of rounded off. Kind of reminds me of like a Space Marine gun turret or something like that. So it has basically the equivalent in the back, so 4 guns, and it has a torpedo equipment that is hard to tell from this angle. The next one is Turbine. I don't know if that's how it's pronounced in Italian, but it's the tier 4, and it continues that. It looks like it has the same gun as the tier 3. No real changes in the proportions. You know, what Wargaming has done in the past is they might have departed more from the stated goal and given you like odds and ends as you go up the line. As they are now developing these lines, it's a lot less frequent that I run across something that just doesn't make any sense. I think they try and save the ones that don't make any sense for premium more frequently than they did in the past. So I appreciate that because the lines themselves, they really maintain the design that you expect. At tier 5, Magistral. This is the continuation of the line itself. Once again, the line is especially effective at close range damage per minute with its SAP/HE gun systems. It has those long range torpedoes, which we'll see in a sec. The stats, they are kind of inverted to your normal gun range being greater than your torpedo range on average. It's a fascinating design that they're bringing, but I think it's because of trying to enable SAP, and I appreciate that. At tier 6, the first barber shop shows up, which is clearly an upgrade in power. I mean, who doesn't want the nose of their ship to have a barbershop drawn on it? Like, you obviously prefer that. This is the Avari, I think. And it has the same system as before. You have like 2 guns in the front, 2 guns in the rear. You have torpedoes in the midship with some AA. At tier 6, did it just jump from? Yeah, tier 6, we had the Avari. At tier 7, we have Luca Tarigo. And this one has an interesting trait. It has one of its gun turrets in the center of the ship. What it looks like, you have a gun turret forward of the superstructure in the midship and then at the rear. So potentially 6 guns and some type of torpedo setup. At tier 8, and this one has the most extreme bow leading up. This one might be punished the hardest when it's approaching a target because of that. It just has so much surface armor that's easy to punish. At tier 8, we have Vittorio Cunabirdi. This one is much flatter. This one looks to be more influenced by the Germans to me than any other faction, just because of the way it's presented. The smokestack looks like a German smokestack to me. It's very low in the water back here. This is going to be really frustrating to shoot and not get the guns or the torpedoes. Conversely, it might be easy for these torpedoes to be busted because there's just no armor back here to shoot at above the waterline. It has like a significant super area. It has 2, 4, 6 guns. So it's a traditional 6-gun setup. At tier 9, we have the Adriatico. Adriatico has a more substantial gun system. The gun turrets now have significant looking armor, thicker, flatter, might be, easier to pin and harder to pin if you don't have enough pin. It has an interesting like Soviet superstructure design here, very rounded off a little bit. It also has 2 guns in the rear. Is a twin smokestack setup with what looks like a torpedo launcher in between the final gun system and maybe an AA system. Maybe a torpedo launcher here, maybe twin side. And then finally, we have the tier 10. This is the Attilio Regolo. Apparently, this was a actual DD. This one looks much more in like a modern vein, like let's pile as much stuff on top of it. This one has 8 guns, so 4 twin gun turrets, 2 in the front, 2 in the rear, and then it has some torpedo systems as well. But this one looks clearly like the most bulky of all of the DDs, and this is probably the most modern one that is offered. Now, appearances wise, it looks cool. I like the barbershop. I think that it works well. The color of the armor, everything on the Italian looks really nice. Now, let's get into the stats that are available for the ships, because those are very interesting. Merry Christmas, Slowpoke. I hope you're having a great December holiday so far. So the line is going to be specialized in close range damage per minute that is good at killing opponent DDs, with some long range torpedoes that have a quick reload, but they move slow and they don't do as much damage as other long range torpedoes. These torpedoes are more like sea mines. They're really just to be spammed in a general area to deny that area of the map to the enemy. And you're supposed to use your guns as sort of a quick assassination tool, but not necessarily like a long range fire and long range fire support. That's just not what these guys are going to specialize in. So we're going to go down to the tier 10 because it's more interesting to look at the tier 10 than anything else. So the tier 10 has the most health, 26,800 of the entire line. It jumps up it jumps up 5,000 hit points from the tier 9. To me, that's going to communicate that they expect it to take a lot of free damage because it's so large and bulky. It is large and bulky, so I appreciate the health. Not sure if it's enough. The main battery, again, 8 guns, and these are the 135 millimeter variety. Look at the max range, 8.5 kilometers is the maximum range of these guns. They were not kidding when they were saying that this is a short range gun system. Now, the high explosive, 1,950. SAP, 3,500. The SAP can pin 38 millimeters of armor, and the high explosive can pin 23 millimeters of armor. So very interesting. This SAP is going to be very bursty, because you can imagine, if we take a look at our calculator real quick. If you imagine the amount of damage that you are expected to do per shot, and then if you calculate, this would be if you were penetrating the armor. That's not going to happen. You're not going to get 100% damage per shell. Instead, you're going to get 30%. And 30% is right around 915 per shell on a target. And if you times that by 8, you're going to get somewhere in the realm of a 7,300 broadside. That will quickly chunk down DDs every 5 seconds. Clearly, that is very high damage. This is very similar to that of the German DDs, where you have the ability to fire a really high damage shell under ideal circumstances. Because it is sap, it can be ricocheted, so you won't be able to fire completely sap, but in the situations that you do get to fire it, it will be very chunky. Obviously, it might be an insane build to maybe push the range as far as you possibly can. We do not know the equipment setup currently, but obviously you have advanced firing training equivalent, a range increase skill, a 4-point skill in the DD line right now. And if it is a tier 10, as we expect, you might be able to equip a range module in slot 6. So that might push the gun systems out further. Let's take a look at maybe an equivalent. Well, let's go with a 52 because I like the 52. So if we were to compare the 52, the base range is 12.1. So it has 4 kilometers extra base range. But obviously you have skills like main battery and AA expert, which is going to increase it by 20%. So 8.5, 20%, you're looking at about 1.7 kilometer increase in range. So it goes from 8.5 to, like 7.7, not 7.7, 9.7. It goes 8.5 to 9.7. And then if we were to also potentially have access to another skill that increases main battery range 16%. So we could look at right at like 10.3, 10.5, if this is indeed the available build that you could get your gun system up to as its maximum firing range. I personally don't think that that will be necessary, but it would be an interesting build nonetheless to contemplate for future play. You could also potentially go for a very spammy torpedo and just have torpedoes constantly rotating in the water. This line is very different from all the other lines that have been available. Let's go back over to this. So the concealment that we have on the ship base is somewhere in the 9.2 kilometer range. So if we look at the available things, we got 10% and then another 10%. So 9.2, if we're going to fully compare, 9.2 times 0.9, that's going to get down to 8.2 and then another 0.9. So the concealment is, let's go 97 because that's another. So with the tier 10, with concealment module equipped, with the concealment commander skill, and a camouflage equipped, we can expect to have somewhere in the realm of 7.23 kilometer detection on the tier 10 Italian DD. Now, that doesn't leave a lot of room to make a mistake, but you have the exhaust smoke, and the exhaust smoke will instantaneously engulf your ship in a smoke effect that will conceal you. And in the case of the Italian DDs, the smoke fire penalty, I believe, is in the realm of like 3.5 kilometers, 3.7. So as long as you are somewhere in 4-kilometer territory, you can quite confidently activate your smoke and pretty much instantly drop off detection. So that's going to be a very intriguing option available. And if we take a look at their planned design, they're going to give us 6 charges without superintendent as a baseline to work off of the tier 10. So they expect us to use these frequently to engage targets. The only downside, of course, of activating a smoke skill is that you are denying yourself vision. So this line might be a line where players will accidentally sabotage themselves by activating exhaust smoke in a situation where they don't actually have vision, and then they would deny themselves the ability to engage that target. But this would allow you to do a lot of like bursty chunkiness under the effect of the smoke, and then maybe disengage, rely on your torpedoes, or maybe go ham even more. It's really on you if the situation calls for it. The emergency engine power is also available. However, you're not going to use this like Paulo Emilio. Paulo Emilio, if we take a look at Paulo Emilio, Paulo Emilio is a completely different beast entirely. Paulo Emilio is a ship where you take your smoke and your speed boost and you use it to enable your torpedo systems. These torpedoes are 6-kilometer range, 23,000 damage. If you look at the torpedo systems available to the tier 10, which supposedly would be even more damage, they only do 13,900. They have a 13.5-kilometer range. They move at 56 knots in the water, but they only do 13.9. That is a very tiny amount of damage. So the expectation is not that you would do an ambush, smoke, engine power, jump on top of someone and wipe them out. That's just not going to be feasible. But you could combo it pretty well with your guns. And all of this is all relying on teammate spotting, or a situation where the player recently fired maybe a battleship and you're rushing him. You can rush him with your sap and your torpedoes, and maybe the combo would actually kill him. The other things that you'll notice that are different, obviously SAP HE, that's the available design. The reload time is ridiculously slow. It has been a really long time. I'm trying to think. I want to believe that the Paulo Emilio design that I first showcase on my YouTube channel. Now I'm going to try and find it on my YouTube channel. Let me look at this off screen real fast. I swear to you that I have a video on my channel that is showcasing a design very similar to what we're getting, because they initially were testing the Apollo with a different design than what ultimately came out. So let me just look at the videos real fast. Research Bureau release impression. When was this video made? This video was released. Oh gosh, it's been so long since this video. I even have my intro. This video came out. When did this video come out? I just want to see the date, the year, 2 years ago. And let's look at this. God, it's been so long. So this was a gun build that I was running on it. Notice a couple things that are different, man. It's like going back in time, really. But you'll notice this has SAP and AEP as the only options. It has exhaust smoke. It also has a speed boost, but the icons are like completely different. Where are the cats? The cats are right here, right there. But yeah, as we move forward in time, the gun systems themselves had a pretty fast reload, if I remember correctly. Yeah, this is right around where the reload would be. And then obviously you activate the exhaust smoke and you drop off detection. Man, the game looks so different already, and this is only 2 years old. but very bursty sap damage. Um, and then you would send torpedoes, and the torpedoes themselves were not impressive. They were slow torpedoes, but they were decent. But this is really where you made all your damage up, is smoking and sapping and locating the shells on like the superstructure where you could penetrate with sap. And it worked really well. Like this was a ship line that I felt really comfortable playing. I don't know. I don't remember how good this game was, but yeah, and honestly, guys, I was a noob back then, even when I didn't think I was. The sap damage though was impressive, and you could run around and you could always use your smoke, exhaust smoke. So it does indeed appear to me that this is the intended design for the entire Italian uh, DD line. This is really exciting. I mean, this is going to be really fun. It's going to be action packed. It's not going to be as like secret torpedo detection, hidden. Uh, it's going to really feel like chunky, very chunky. You can see the amount of damage you do per broadside. It's very effective, and they're going to miss out. They're going to grab the kill before. No, actually, I got the kill. Wow, awesome. Man, the explosions look so old, don't they? But yeah, that was the type of design that they were doing here, and that makes me very excited. That has me very, very excited. Obviously, Paulo Emilio is a fun ship, but Paulo Emilio is not a fair ship all the time with the way that it delivers torpedoes to targets that, pretty much can't do anything because they can't detect you in torpedoes and all that stuff. So, very interesting design that they seem to be. It looks like they have nerfed a little bit of the range design. If I'm being completely honest, like they drew it in maybe like 2 kilometers, 3 kilometers. So it seems that they are aware of some of the more extreme overpowered design elements from that previous gameplay type. But I do think that that's exactly what we're going to end up getting. And that's really appealing to me as a player because that is something that is going to be really good in the 1 versus 1 mirror matchups, any of the DD matchups. This is going to be a really tough DD to deal with because you will probably want to avoid encountering them. Obviously, 7.2, 7.3 kilometer detection, that's not difficult to avoid, but in some situations, it is very difficult to avoid because they do have 41 knot speed, and when they activate their engine boost, they will have 25% faster engine. So they will be able to chase you down, kind of like a French DD, and will be doing different types of damage. Instead of main battery reload and chunking you through that cooldown cycle, they will have sap, and they will chunk you with just sap. And if they feel overwhelmed, they'll activate their exhaust smoke and disengage. Whereas the French, if they overrun, well, they might overrun too far. Now, the French do have superior short range torpedoes, but the Italians have the long range sea mine torpedoes that might end up being useful in their own way. The AA gun range is unimpressive. It seems to be a mirror of the French. 13.7 seems to be the maximum range of your AA. That is among one of the worst at tier 10 for a DD. So that's going to be something that might be a challenge. It sounds to me like that will be only for self-defense, just like the Kleber. And we know how the Kleber, it can be good, but it also can be frustrating because the aircraft carrier could hover close enough to you that could threaten you. And there are pluses and minuses, of course, to having your AA so short range that you never have to turn it off. It's easier to just, use it whenever it's convenient. But it also doesn't give you flak bursts. Flak burst is a big deal. DR, for example, would not be afraid of this DD at all. Nothing about this AA is scary for something like the FDR. So that's a downside. The torpedo amount, your broadside, if you get a point blank ambush, you might actually not kill targets. But if you chunk it with sap and look at your shells, you'll be able to. And that's pretty much the design principle of the entire line. I'm not going to talk about every single one. I just want you guys to understand that the gameplay has been tested. It works. It might work a little too well, and that's why I think they've drawn back the gun range a little bit. The other ships that they have available, there's going to be a premium tier 7 Italian FR-25. FR-25 is this one. It doesn't really look like it has anything different. It pretty much is a Guepard, so a French DD with Italian AA. So, and obviously, I think it has SAP as its equipment. Yeah, it has HE and SAP. So its SAP doesn't do as much damage, but it's still chunky. It's a 139, so these are basically French guns. Taylor Vaughn, thank you for that. I really appreciate the 4 months. Appreciate it. We will be talking about other things. I just wanted to cover the Italians first. And then the other new ship, the Atlantico. Atlantico is a Pan-American battleship, tier 8. It is former of the British Empire, or at least it's using British main battery and secondary. And then it has American AA. That equipment seems that it will work well enough together. It also seems that they're giving them long-range secondary armaments, so it may appear to me that the Pan-American naval battleship line could be specializing in some type of secondary armament. I would have to wait and see how that actually functions. But, you know, it's cool, I guess. But for me, the more exciting thing, of course, is brand new lines that introduce brand new gameplay that players can grind and enjoy. And I think that's what the Italian DDs are offering here. Something that is exciting, different, but familiar. And I know it is effective based on previous design testing. So I can't wait to try these out whenever they are available.